This is Greg Troutwine with Marine Technology TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Dr. Lorraine Gray, the Director of Permitting, Pioneer Consulting, to discuss some recent contract wins and some general trends in the subsea cable market. Lorraine, to start, can you give us a by-the-numbers look at Pioneer Consulting today using the metrics of your choice?
Sure. So Pioneer is comprised of 13 core members. So despite being a small enterprise, we have a large pool of associates we normally work with around the world. We've worked across 6 continents, worked in every ocean and time zone, and our core team is based in the US, Scotland, France, England, and the UAE, but serves projects well beyond these locations. We've successfully completed around 150 projects to date, and collectively the team has roughly 225 years worth of experience. So we have a great mix of skills and are well known within the fiber optic cables industry.
So can you provide for us a brief career biography, an overview of your current responsibilities and insights on when you first realized that yours would be a career in technology?
So my career started in studying biology, and it was during this time that I then began questioning what we were doing to the planet. And I branched into environmental sciences, and environmental impact assessment, or EIA, is a key part of this. But I think it was only when I started my PhD in fish ecology that I realized that I was living and breathing a career in marine science and technology. A key skill in maritime industries, which I'm fortunate to have developed over the past 20 years, is in using GIS to create maps for the marine area. I learned this through working for a local government in infrastructure planning and licensing. I then went on to work for national government, writing marine spatial policy. So this is guidance for developers and planners to help make decisions on where marine development can and cannot occur. And I worked with industries and stakeholders, mainly fishermen, to reform the Scottish planning system, making sure decisions on site selection were made faster and were more informed with better evidence base in the form of maps. But then 10 years ago, I was faced with a move in location, and with 2 small children to look after, I questioned whether to continue to work for government, where most of my salary would go to childcare, or start up my own company and do contracting for industry. So doing the childcare myself, working around their needs. So I went for that riskier option and found myself soon working around a different schedule to the normal 9 to 5 working hours as an independent contractor. I worked for a larger consultancy doing EIA for major projects in oil and gas and renewables, where Scotland has been a major player for the past 30 years. I've worked on UK government contracts, did some academic work, wrote spatial guidance for the European Commission. More recently, for the past 3.5 years, I've primarily worked in the subsea cables industry. 1 year with government, issuing licenses for survey and installation, and another 2 with Pioneer Consulting, where I lead the transatlantic and Europe permitting team. So I manage permit acquisition in various countries, scoping, procuring, tracking, and complying with government and non-government permits required to survey, construct, and own cable systems.
So very good. So C Squared Woazone recently selected Pioneer Consulting to aid the deployment of Google's Equiano cable connecting Togo to South Africa and Portugal. Can you give us an overview of that project with insight on Pioneer Consulting's contribution?
Sure. So the project enabled C Squared to land Equiano cable in March this year by building a branch into Togo, offering up to 1 terabyte per second of capacity between Portugal and South Africa. So Pioneer has been providing general subsea consulting services to C Squared, initially focusing on the design, procurement, and implementation of the cable landing station and the system's transmission equipment. We're also assisting C Squared with the development of the land-based infrastructure, which is required to land the cable, such as the beach manhole, the outside plant, and the backhaul to Lomé, which is the capital of Togo. So Pioneer played a critical role in bridging the technical and commercial needs and telecom operation capabilities of C Squared with the national interests of the sovereign-owned telecoms and ICT sector in Togo, ensuring that both parties could move forward in their missions to better the digital infrastructure of Togo. We're really excited to continue working on this project, expected to be complete later this year.
So when you look at the submarine fiber optics telecommunication systems business as a whole, what are the primary business drivers for the coming 12 to 24 months, and where do you today see some of the best opportunities?
So over the past century and a half, since the first transoceanic cable was laid, the primary sources of demand for subsea capacity have undergone several fundamental shifts, from the telegraph to voice telephony to the internet. And today, another shift is underway as private content network demand has overtaken the internet as the major driver for the continued international bandwidth and route development. So some of the largest private content providers, mostly Google and Facebook, and to a lesser extent, Amazon and Microsoft, are now building their own subsea cable infrastructure because they want to link up countries via their data centers. So the whole world is ramping up its demand for fiber optic cables simultaneously, creating a lot of opportunity. And it's up to the supply chain to react. And data centers, spare parts, and the manufacturing, cable ships, to name but a few.
What do you see as the prime technology drivers today that are driving the industry's future as a whole?
Well, content demand from the end user is what's driving technology. And I'll give you several examples. One is 5G, 6G, 7G technology deployment, which will increase the internet access speed via mobile networks and devices. There will also be a further increase in fixed broadband connectivity. Another example driver is the development of new video real-time entertainment services that have higher bandwidth requirements. This will also drive technology diversity. Also, we've got wider adoption of cloud-based services like storage and computing, requires constantly moving massive amounts of data worldwide. That's another technology driver that will shape the industry's future. And we're also observing a geographic drive. An increase in population and level of development in some countries is increasing demand. So over the next decades, our eyes and ears will continue to consume more data over the internet. And offering internet services to the end users requires diverse technologies and involves many stakeholders that interact and contribute to the internet ecosystem and content delivery chain.
Every job obviously has its challenges. What do you consider to be the biggest challenge in carrying out your job day to day, year to year?
So one of the biggest challenges in permitting at the moment is the geopolitical landscape. Cables are landing in countries and states where perhaps they haven't before, or perhaps it's been 20 years ago where the systems are now being replaced. So there's a knowledge gap in government, and this creates some uncertainty in obtaining permits in time, due to the authorities not having set a precedence in terms of managing impacts and their stakeholders. On a day-to-day basis, I'm finding there's an increased responsibility on us, the permitting specialists, to meet and educate government officials and other affected stakeholders, to ensure mitigations are proportionate to the scale and nature of design and the location and timing of activities, whether it's survey or construction. Another challenge is how busy the seas are becoming, creating conflict between other seabed users, especially with emerging industries like renewables. Initially, it was hoped that fiber optic cables could coexist, and this was being pushed by the marine spatial planning agenda. But the reality is that developers are shying away from installing fiber optic cables through these large wind farms because of the potential maintenance requirements. I mean, I'm all for an increase in renewable energy, but it is a double-edged sword. The fact that these huge areas are being taken up by wind farms has displaced fishing grounds, and it's created a lot of backlash in Europe where fishing associations are demanding more from cable developers. And this is something that hasn't happened yet in the US, but will year on year as renewables increase in spatial footprint.